My name is Andrew Sutton. I was born in Anaheim, California, and I'm an aviation machinist mate, petty officer first class in the United States Navy. My primary job responsibilities are the overhaul and repair of engine and power plant related systems. I was previously in Point Mugu, California for 4 years, overhauling turboprop engines, and I'm currently stationed on Whidbey Island, Washington for the past 3 years. I'm a sailor who has never sailed. It's odd when I tell people that I'm in the Navy, but have never been to sea. The Navy's advertisements always show the carriers and the different ships in the US fleet. On those carriers are fighter jets, helicopters, and other support aircraft, but hardly do we ever see the shore side of the Navy, such as the P-3 Orion aircraft and the P-8 Poseidon aircraft patrolling overhead. Both the P-8 and P-3 are maritime patrol aircraft that perform intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, as well as submarine hunting. I currently work on the P-8 Alpha Poseidon. The aircraft I'm responsible for is a modified Boeing 737, which is way too big to fit on a carrier. If you have flown commercially within the past 10 years, odds are you have flown in the same airframe as the aircraft I'm responsible for. When I first joined the Navy, both my recruiters were shipboard sailors and had not told me about the shore side of the Navy. Shoreside is described as not deploying with the ships. Shore side of the Navy deploys from one land-based location, as in Whidbey Island, Washington, to another land-based location, such as Japan. During the height of the coronavirus, I went on my first deployment. I deployed with Patrol Squadron 1 to Misawa, Japan. We flew aboard our own aircraft, the P-8, and other aircraft to Japan instead of sailing aboard a ship. The sea side of the Navy loved to talk bad about the shore side of the Navy because most of the time we have our own hotel room, get per diem, eat out a lot, and have great internet to talk to family with. Can't complain about any of that. We show up to work hard, and then play hard. It's odd being on deployment, yet being able to go out in town and eat authentic sushi or visit notable parts of Japan. While deployed, we still had to wear our masks, same as in the US. However, we also had stricter rules that we had to follow in Japan. When we were outside and not within 6 feet of someone, we didn't have to wear our masks. However, if we were inside an establishment or within 6 feet of someone, we had to mask up. When I first arrived at Japan, I began to notice how the design of everyday things, such as sink heights, toilet heights, vehicle sizes, doorways, and tables were much smaller than I'm used to. I'm about average height for an American male at 5'10". However, this is very tall for Japan. Being this was my first time out of the US, the size of everyday items was something I hadn't considered. I did have a few experiences to be able to speak to locals when I was out in town and not at a regular establishment, such as a grocery store or a larger restaurant. I was surprised at the level of understanding of the English language the average younger Japanese citizen was aware of. I could progress through a normal conversation about the weather, generic sports, where to get food, or places to see in the area with someone about my age. When I spoke to another Japanese citizen that was more mature in age, they were short-spoken and did use very basic English. However, the confidence behind the words was just not as strong. As for out in town, the Navy did brief us that the typical American is labeled as a tall, white, loud, boisterous, and rude in the eyes of Japanese culture. Having been briefed on this, my brothers and sisters did take that into account, but in practice, it happened just as expected. The notable time this brief came into play was on a commuter train into a major city in the region. No babies crying, no kids screaming, no people talking, just the sounds of the tracks below us. The sound of a rustling bag was lower than any murmur a person made on that train. However, the loudest thing on that train was my group. I had to interrupt a conversation I was having to point out to someone in my group. This really drives home the brief of society before self. The Japanese are very aware of how their actions impact others. Outside the gates, it was obvious we were military. Haircut, backpacks, American clothing, and the composition of our group. I've also been told how we carry ourselves point out that we are not just common Americans, but in fact military, such as our walk, our talk, our stance, and the general presence we bring. Just outside the gates, we still have hints of an Americanized culture mixed with predominantly Japanese culture. However, in the major cities, things were a lot different. They look just like the comics and animes as I've seen them before, such as small cars, sliding doors that led to the various eateries, buildings that take advantage of every possible space you can imagine. Scenes are very picturesque. Being a sailor who has never sailed has allowed me to see the Seiru Temple, home of the 2,135-meter tall Buddha statue, the largest sitting statue in Japan. You really do not know how big the statue is until you're standing right next to it and looking up at it. I never thought I would be visiting something like this. The temple is also home to a 5-story pagoda, which is a feat of architecture for the time when it was built. I have also seen Japan's Nibuta Museum, which contains exceptionally large ornate floats, which I say are similar to nature to the Rose Parade floats in size. These floats are used to depict scenes from Japanese culture in the early historical periods. These floats ranged in size from the smaller ones requiring about 4 people, and the larger floats requiring 15 or more people just to move the float by hand. Each float was mounted on a wheel system that carried most of the weight. However, the wheels did allow the float to have a tighter turning radius and allow it to be rocked back and forth by the workers underneath the float. Each was ornately decorated with many colors that highlighted the detail and the sense of perspective to the pieces. While each float was huge in size, they did seem very fragile because of their wood and fabric construction. Being American in Japan did have its privileges. One of those privileges was tattoos not being as frowned upon for Westerners. Being I'm in the military and near base, there were 2 distinct tattoo shops within a 10-minute walking distance outside the base. I personally did not have any experience of any negative attitude towards anyone with tattoos or anyone in my group that has tattoos. Most of the people in my military group have tattoos and proudly show them off. During my time in Japan, I did actually complete my first tattoo. My tattoo is a blue koi surrounded by water with a traditional cherry blossoms surrounding the koi. I have also enjoyed the koi ponds growing up and thought that it would be a culturally respected tattoo to leave Japan with. The last notable experience about my time in Japan was driving on the wrong side of the road. My first time driving in Japan was on a base in a small compact pickup truck for work purposes. The first sign of this is different was climbing into the right side of the car. The indicator lights and wipers were also swapped. I kept telling myself left side, in order not to merge into traffic on the wrong way. I'm happy I got to experience driving in a different country. However, I'm also glad that I snapped back to the normal driving when I got back to the US.